The code of creation imagined for a moment that the greatest secret of existence was never lost, only forgotten. That everything around you, from the stars in the sky to the thoughts in your mind, moves according to one divine pattern, one vibration that connects every atom of creation. And imagine that over a century ago, one man came closer than anyone to unlocking that pattern. His name was Nikola Tesla. The world remembers Tesla as the eccentric genius who lit up the planet, the man who dreamed of free energy and wireless power, the inventor who was years ahead of his time. But what few people understand is that Tesla was not merely experimenting with electricity. He was searching for the language of God. Tesla believed that behind the material world, behind light and matter and energy, there was an invisible structure, a cosmic intelligence pulsing through everything. To him, science and spirit were not enemies. They were mirrors. He once said, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." But hidden within those words is more than a scientific observation. It is a mystical revelation. Tesla had seen something he could not fully explain to the world of his time. He had glimpsed what he called the wheelwork of the universe, the unseen machinery that animates all life. What he discovered would later be buried, misunderstood, and even suppressed, because it revealed a truth too powerful for those who thrive on control, that every human being can tune into the same creative frequency that built the stars. In his lonely laboratory late at night, surrounded by coils of light and humming currents, Tesla would sit in silence and listen. He said he could hear the universe, a faint rhythmic pulse that seemed to speak in waves rather than words. It was this communion with energy that led him to his greatest insights. He was not just inventing. He was decoding creation itself. He came to believe that what people called God was not a distant being, but the very vibration that sustains reality. To Tesla, the divine was not something separate from science. It was science itself, the intelligence woven into the mathematics of light, the harmony of sound, the geometry of space. Imagine the courage it took to say that in an age ruled by dogma and materialism. Imagine standing in front of the world and claiming that you had touched the pulse of the divine through numbers and frequencies. Tesla was laughed at, dismissed, and labeled a madman. Yet he kept going. He could not unsee what he had seen. He said the earth itself was alive, that it had a heartbeat, a frequency. He believed every planet, every cell, every human being was an instrument in a universal symphony. Most people live their entire lives deaf to that music. Tesla had learned to listen. He discovered that when a frequency reached a certain point of resonance, it could move matter without force. It could transmit power invisibly. It could heal the body, alter the mind, even affect weather patterns. But more than anything, it revealed a shocking truth. Consciousness and energy are the same thing. This was Tesla's hidden revelation, that the mind is not a byproduct of the brain but a receiver of frequencies. That thoughts are waves interacting with the field of creation. That prayer, meditation, and imagination are not metaphors. They are literal tools for tuning consciousness into higher frequencies. When he spoke of energy, frequency, and vibration, he was describing a bridge between the physical and the spiritual, the blueprint of reality itself. In private writings, Tesla described visions that came to him in flashes of light. Entire designs would appear in his mind fully formed, as if transmitted from a higher dimension. He said he could rotate them in his imagination, test them, and perfect them before ever touching a piece of metal. It was as though he had access to a cosmic library of knowledge that others could only glimpse through intuition. Was it genius, or was it connection? Tesla never took credit for these flashes. He said they came from what he called the great mind. To him, inspiration was not invention, it was communication. He saw himself not as a creator, but as a translator of divine intelligence into human form. There are stories of Tesla walking through storms, lightning cracking above him, whispering that he could feel God's power flowing through the air. He said that electricity was not merely a physical force, it was a manifestation of life itself. Every spark, every current, every surge of light was an echo of the divine heartbeat, a fragment of the source that animates all existence. And yet, he warned that humanity was deaf to this truth. We were building machines of immense power without understanding the spirit that moves through them. He said that when science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. He was right. Today, we see glimpses of what he foresaw: quantum entanglement, zero-point energy, the realization that observation itself shapes reality. But Tesla understood this long before it was measurable. To him, the universe was not a machine. It was a mind. And like any mind, it responded to intention. He spoke of frequency not just as a scientific principle, but as a state of being. He believed that human emotion was a form of energy, that love was the highest frequency of all, capable of harmonizing dissonance in both the body and the world. He believed that every thought carried resonance, and that if humanity learned to align its collective frequency with love, we could literally transform the planet. Tesla was not only speaking metaphorically. He was describing the same truth mystics, prophets, and enlightened beings have spoken of for millennia, that the divine spirit is not out there in the heavens, but right here, humming within the fabric of existence. This is what he meant when he said, "My brain is only a receiver." In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. That core was not a religious construct. It was the frequency of God, the living energy that connects all consciousness. But here lies the forbidden part of Tesla's discovery. He realized that if every human could access this energy directly, we would no longer depend on external systems for power, knowledge, or even spiritual guidance. We would no longer need to seek divinity outside ourselves. We would become conscious co-creators of reality. And that idea, in the world of greed and control, was dangerous. Tesla's work was suppressed, his notes confiscated, his inventions buried under government archives. They called it national security, but what it truly was spiritual security. Because if the masses awakened to what Tesla had found, the world's entire structure of control would crumble overnight. Yet, knowledge cannot be destroyed. Truth can only be forgotten for a while. And now, in this age of awakening, his message is rising again, a call from the future echoing through the frequencies of time. Tesla's truth is not about machines, it's about you. About the infinite potential you carry to tune your consciousness to the divine vibration that moves the stars. He tried to show us that science and spirit are one, two expressions of the same energy singing in different languages. And now that you're hearing this, it means the signal has reached you. The frequency is calling again. The language of vibration. In his quiet moments, Nikola Tesla often described the universe not as a collection of separate objects, but as a living ocean of vibration. To him, nothing was still. Even what seemed solid, the desk, the floor, the ground beneath his feet, was simply energy condensed into form, vibrating at frequencies too slow for the human senses to perceive. He once said, "To understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." Most people repeat those words without understanding the depth behind them. But for Tesla, those were not poetic metaphors, they were the literal mechanics of creation. He believed that vibration was the language of God, that the divine spirit does not speak in words or images, but in oscillations of energy. Every frequency carries meaning, and every living thing is an instrument tuned to its own note within the universal symphony. If the vibration of a being rises, they experience harmony, peace, inspiration, love. If it falls, They experience disharmony, confusion, fear, pain. The universe responds not to our spoken language, but to the frequencies we emit. This, Tesla understood, was the foundation of both science and spirituality. He observed how resonance, the phenomenon where one vibration influences another, was not limited to sound or mechanics. It was the law that governs all relationships in existence. When two frequencies align, they share energy. They begin to dance together. And this is where Tesla began to connect vibration to consciousness itself. He theorized that thought and emotion are not abstract concepts, but measurable energies. They have frequency, amplitude, and impact. The human mind, he said, is both a transmitter and a receiver, a living antenna tuned into the frequencies of the universe. Tesla envisioned the human body as an electric instrument powered by divine current. The heart beats through electromagnetic rhythm. The brain hums with electrical potential. Every cell in the body pulses with bioelectric charge, synchronizing to the frequency of life. To him, this was not biology, this was divinity in motion. He often worked in silence, claiming that in stillness he could hear the hum of existence. Some nights, when the lab was dark except for the faint blue corona of his coils, he would close his eyes and feel the rhythm of energy around him. It was as though he was listening to the heartbeat of God itself. This communion became the source of his inventions. The radio, the alternating current, the wireless transmission of energy. All of these ideas came not from formulas on a page, but from direct experience with vibration. Tesla was not simply experimenting with electricity. He was communing with it. He said that every human could do the same if they learned to quiet their inner noise. He believed that intuition was the higher form of intelligence, that it came from tuning one's frequency into the greater field. Logic could measure, but intuition could receive. Tesla called this the spirit of invention. But what he was truly describing was a spiritual technology, a way of aligning consciousness with divine order. He realized that the same energy that lights the stars also flows through the human soul. And when a person becomes still enough to feel that current, they awaken to their true nature. In his journals, Tesla spoke about moments of pure illumination. He said ideas would appear suddenly, as if they had always existed and were simply revealing themselves to him. He described them as flashes of light, brief moments where he could see the entire structure of an invention all at once. To most people, this would sound like genius, but to Tesla, it was guidance. He believed that there exists a field of universal intelligence, what ancient mystics might call the Akashic record, and what modern physicists might call the quantum field. This field holds all knowledge, all possibilities, all blueprints of creation. When a mind becomes clear, when emotion and thought move in harmony, that field becomes accessible. Tesla tuned himself to that frequency deliberately. He said that solitude was essential for connection. The mind, he wrote, is sharper and keener in seclusion. Isolation is the secret of invention. When you are alone, you are in contact with the inner currents of the universe. In solitude, he would enter a meditative trance-like state where he could feel energy as texture, sound, and color. His assistants would later say that he seemed to drift into another dimension, eyes open but focused on something far beyond the physical. When he returned, he would begin drawing complex schematics from memory, as though he had seen them fully formed in another world. But Tesla was not content with personal revelation. He wanted humanity to feel what he had felt, to know what he had seen. He dreamed of a world where everyone could connect directly to this divine frequency. He imagined devices that could harmonize human vibration with the Earth's natural resonance, restoring balance to mind and body. He once said that the future of medicine would be the medicine of frequencies. He believed illness was dissonance, an interruption in the natural rhythm of the body. Restore harmony, he said, and the body would heal itself. Modern science is only beginning to catch up to this idea. From sound therapy to electromagnetic treatments, from heart-brain coherence research to quantum biology, Tesla's vision echoes everywhere. But for him, it was more than technology. It was a form of prayer. He saw no division between science and spirit. He saw them as two hands of the same creator, one exploring matter, the other exploring meaning. To him, the laboratory and the temple were the same place. Both were spaces to commune with the divine frequency of life. And yet, his understanding of vibration went deeper still. He began to see that everything in creation, from atoms to galaxies, follows sacred geometry. He spoke often of the numbers 3, 6, and 9, calling them the key to the universe. These numbers were not superstition. They represented ratios of resonance. The triangle, the hexagon, the spiral, these were not symbols, but energetic blueprints. Tesla saw the entire cosmos as a mathematical symphony, and 369 were its primary notes. He hinted that if humanity understood these numbers fully, we would unlock limitless energy and perhaps even direct communication with divine intelligence. He said, "If you only knew the magnificence of the numbers 3, 6, and 9, you would have the key to the universe." To him, these numbers symbolize the rhythm of creation, the expansion, contraction, and balance of energy. He believed that even the human mind operated on the same triadic pattern: thought, emotion, and will. When these three are aligned, consciousness resonates with the divine frequency. Tesla's world was one of patterns and harmonies. He saw in everything, light, magnetism, sound, and life, the fingerprint of a divine intelligence that humans could both study and experience. He once remarked that when scientists begin to understand energy in spiritual terms, they will finally grasp what ancient prophets were trying to say. The Spirit of God was not an abstract idea. It was energy, intelligent, conscious, creative. And that energy is everywhere. But the deeper Tesla went, the more resistance he faced. The scientific establishment of his time could not accept a worldview that merged physics with spirit. The church could not accept a scientist who claimed to have found God through mathematics. And so, Tesla walked alone between two worlds, misunderstood by both. Yet he remained unwavering in his conviction that frequency was the true bridge between heaven and earth. He saw humanity not as fallen, but as untuned. He said that the suffering of the world is not the result of sin, but of dissonance, that when people act out of greed, hatred, or fear, they are simply out of alignment with the divine vibration. Bring the mind, body, and spirit into harmony, and peace would be inevitable. Tesla's vision was not religious, it was revolutionary. It suggested that heaven was not a place above the clouds, but a frequency we could access here and now. That enlightenment was not a mystery granted by God, but a state of resonance achieved through consciousness. He believed that once humanity understood this, wars would end, scarcity would dissolve, and the world would transform into a network of shared energy, both physical and spiritual. And that, perhaps, was the real reason his work was silenced. Because a humanity that knows it can connect directly to the divine frequency cannot be controlled. The Earth's hidden pulse, there were nights when Tesla would walk for hours beneath the open sky, listening. He once said that silence is not empty, it is full of answers. Beneath the wind and the hum of the city, he claimed he could feel the pulse of the earth itself. It was not poetic fancy, it was literal. He believed that the planet was alive, resonating like a vast tuning fork in the cosmic orchestra. Tesla discovered that the earth vibrates at a natural frequency, a heartbeat so subtle that most people would never know it existed. He called it resonance, but to him, it was more than a scientific curiosity. It was sacred. It was the breath of God moving through the body of the planet. He theorized that all life, all consciousness, was influenced by this rhythm. Every living organism, from the smallest cell to the human brain, was attuned to it. He believed that when a person was in harmony with the Earth's frequency, they experienced clarity, vitality, and inspiration. When they fell out of sync, confusion and illness followed. Tesla's experiments with resonance became legendary. In his laboratory, he built oscillators that could vibrate at different frequencies. When he tuned them precisely, strange phenomena occurred. Objects would begin to move, glass would shatter, even buildings would tremble. He once claimed that with the right frequency, he could split the planet itself. The newspapers mocked him, calling him the man who shakes the earth. But Tesla was not talking about destruction. He was describing connection. He was proving that vibration, when aligned with natural resonance, could unleash infinite power with minimal effort. He saw resonance as the key to understanding not just mechanics but consciousness. The same way his oscillator could sync with the frequency of steel or stone, the human mind could sync with the frequency of the universe. He said that when one achieves true coherence, when thoughts, emotions, and energy vibrate together, miracles become possible. It was through studying the Earth's resonance that Tesla began to sense the presence of a universal intelligence. He wrote, "The Earth is a conductor of acoustic resonance." To him, this meant the planet was not inert but alive, communicating constantly with the cosmos. Lightning, thunder, even the magnetic field swirling around the poles were expressions of this conversation, a dialogue between God and creation. He saw the planet as a sacred instrument, tuned by the divine. The storms were chords. The aurora borealis was light-made sound. The oceans were bass tones resonating through the lower frequencies of existence. Humanity, he said, was part of this orchestra, but most of us were playing out of tune. Tesla began to dream of building devices that could harmonize human energy with the Earth's. He envisioned towers that could transmit, not just electricity but life force, amplifying the planet's natural frequency to heal, uplift, and connect humanity. He believed that if he could broadcast this resonance around the world, it would awaken what he called the higher mind of humankind. He named this vision the World Wireless System, but few understood what he truly meant. They thought he was building a system for global communication. In truth, he was building a bridge between the material and the divine. Wardenclyffe Tower, his greatest project, was more than an engineering feat. It was a spiritual transmitter. Tesla designed it not merely to send signals through the air, but to use the Earth itself as a conductor. He planned to send waves of frequency through the planet's crust, tapping into its natural resonance to create a limitless source of energy, clean, free, and infinite. He believed this energy was divine because it could be drawn directly from the fabric of creation. No combustion, no consumption, no destruction. Pure harmony with nature's rhythm. It was, in his words, a symphony of light. But those in power were not ready for such freedom. When Tesla revealed that his system could provide free energy for all humanity, funding vanished overnight. Wardenclyffe Tower was dismantled, and his dream was buried under fear and greed. Yet, Tesla never lost faith. He knew that energy could not be destroyed, only transformed. He said, "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries." What he meant was that true science must study consciousness itself, because consciousness is the original frequency. Tesla came to understand that thoughts and emotions could interact with the same field his machines touched. That human intention, focused and coherent, could resonate with the Earth's frequency and influence reality. He believed that the human body, like the planet, was both transmitter and receiver, designed to tune into the field of divine intelligence. This is why he valued solitude and meditation so deeply. He knew that to hear the frequency of God, one had to quiet the static of the mind. He often said that genius was not creation but connection, that the greatest ideas are received, not invented. And perhaps that is why he was so far ahead of his time. He was not racing against other scientists. He was listening to something they had forgotten to hear. Tesla saw energy everywhere, not just in wires and machines, but in people, emotions, and even prayer. He spoke of a universal energy field connecting all things. And though physics would not name it until decades later, he had already discovered what we now call the quantum field. To Tesla, this field was the Spirit of God. It was not separate from creation. It was creation. Every atom was a note, every thought a ripple, every heartbeat a drum within the divine rhythm. He began to understand that what we call miracles are simply expressions of natural law at higher frequencies. That what mystics call grace is the same as what physicists call coherence. That love, the most powerful emotion of all, is not abstract, it is the highest vibration in the spectrum of energy, the closest resonance to God's own frequency. Tesla often described the universe as a symphony of light. He said that every living being was both an instrument and a note in that symphony, and that harmony among us could literally change the physical world. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, he said again, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Those were not mere words. They were an invocation, a prayer in scientific form. In his final years, Tesla became more withdrawn, spending long hours alone, speaking quietly to pigeons that gathered outside his window. Many thought he had lost touch with reality, but perhaps he had simply moved beyond it. He told a friend that when he looked into the eyes of those birds, he saw souls, sparks of divine light clothed in feathers. He said their wings reminded him of energy itself, always in motion, always vibrating. For Tesla, everything was alive, everything was sacred, everything was part of the same field of divine intelligence. He once said, "My brain is only a receiver." In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. That core, he believed, was the same vibration that created the earth, the stars, and every conscious being. It was God's frequency. Tesla's dream was not only to harness that frequency through machines, but to awaken it in humanity. He wanted us to realize that every invention, every spark of genius, every act of creation was evidence of our connection to that divine field. That the power he discovered in his laboratory was not exclusive to him, it lived within us all. But the world was not ready. And so, his greatest discovery, the one that could unite science and spirit, became his greatest secret. Yet the signal he awakened never disappeared. It waits still, vibrating quietly beneath our feet, humming in the air, beating in the silence between each thought. The earth is still singing Tesla's song, and somewhere in that song is the code to everything, the rhythm of creation, the language of God. The mind of God. In the last decades of his life, Nikola Tesla became less interested in the machines he could build and more fascinated by the invisible power behind them. His notebooks began to shift from calculations and blueprints to meditations on thought, light, and the fabric of reality. He had begun to see what mystics and visionaries had known for centuries, that consciousness itself is the architect of the universe. He wrote that all matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force that brings the atom to vibration and holds this minute solar system together. He said that behind this force there must exist a conscious and intelligent mind, and that mind is the matrix of all matter. He had discovered, through science, what spiritual traditions had always taught, that the universe is mental. Tesla believed that every human being carries within them a spark of this cosmic intelligence. We are not isolated consciousnesses wandering through a mechanical world. We are extensions of the divine mind, temporarily experiencing separation so we can rediscover unity. He said the day humanity learns to harness the power of thought, it will unlock a level of creation greater than any machine ever built. He had already glimpsed this truth through his own experiences. In his most creative states, Tesla entered what he called the field of knowing. He described it as a place of light and vibration, where knowledge existed whole and perfect, waiting to be received. There were no thoughts there, only patterns of energy that translated themselves into understanding when his consciousness aligned with them. To enter that space, he said, required purity of mind. Not purity in a moral sense, but in frequency. The mind had to be quiet, coherent, and focused. Emotion had to be harmonized, not chaotic. He understood that thoughts are electrical, emotions are magnetic, and together they form the electromagnetic blueprint of reality. What you think and what you feel are not invisible forces drifting in emptiness. They are energetic patterns interacting with the field of creation. Tesla realized that this is how the divine mind operates. God does not create through hands but through thought and vibration. He believed humans do the same, though most are unaware of it. Each thought is a pulse of frequency, each emotion a modulation of energy, and together they send ripples into the fabric of reality. The clearer and more coherent those vibrations, the more quickly they manifest. Tesla's own life proved this principle. He said his inventions were never forced. They appeared in moments of inspiration, as if reality itself was responding to his vibration. The wireless transmitter, the rotating magnetic field, the Tesla coil, all were manifestations of alignment between mind and the divine pattern. He had learned that creativity is not an act of personal genius but of resonance. The universe itself is the composer. The human mind is the instrument. When the instrument is tuned, the melody flows effortlessly. This realization changed him. He began to see humanity not as flawed or limited, but as dormant creators. He said the greatest tragedy of the human race is that we fail to see our divine potential. We live as though powerless, forgetting that thought and energy are the same substance. He once told a friend that if people understood how powerful their minds truly are, they would never think a negative thought again. Every thought, he said, vibrates eternally through the universe, influencing what it touches. Modern science is beginning to echo his intuition. Quantum physics reveals that observation alters the behavior of particles. The mind is not passive, it is participatory. Tesla foresaw this before it had a name. He understood that consciousness is the observer that collapses possibility into form. He believed that prayer, meditation, and intention were simply ways of focusing the observer, tuning consciousness into coherence with the divine frequency so that creation becomes deliberate instead of accidental. In his quiet hours, he experimented not just with machines but with the mind itself. He would visualize every component of an invention until he could see it operate in perfect precision in his imagination. Then, when he built it in the physical world, it worked exactly as he had envisioned. He said that imagination was not fantasy but a higher form of perception. To imagine clearly is to access the realm where creation begins. Tesla's understanding of imagination bordered on the mystical. He said that the creative mind is an extension of the cosmic mind, and that to imagine something vividly is to begin pulling it from potential into manifestation. Every great discovery, every breakthrough, every work of art begins this way, as a vibrational pattern formed first in consciousness. He compared this process to tuning into a radio signal. The information is already there, traveling through space. The moment you match the frequency, you receive it. Likewise, every idea, invention, or solution already exists in the field of potential. You don't create it from nothing, you tune into it. And what determines your tuning? Vibration. He said that emotions are the tuning dials of the soul. Fear, anger, and doubt lower your frequency, making it harder to access higher information. Gratitude, joy, and love raise your frequency, aligning you with divine intelligence. That is why inspiration often arrives in moments of peace or wonder. In those moments, Your vibration harmonizes with the universal field and knowledge flows freely. Tesla saw that this principle applied to the entire human experience. Our relationships, our health, our success, all are reflections of the frequencies we hold. The outer world is not separate from the inner. It is a mirror. He once said that if you want to change the world, change your vibration. The world you perceive is not fixed. It is a projection of your own resonance interacting with the field of infinite possibility. Change your frequency and you literally shift timelines. Tesla did not use the word manifestation, but that is what he was describing: creation through vibration. He believed that humanity's next evolution would not come from machines or technology, but from the awakening of consciousness. The real power, he said, lies not in harnessing external energy but in mastering internal frequency. When the mind becomes coherent and the heart aligned, human beings can perform what religion calls miracles and science calls anomalies. This was Tesla's ultimate secret, that divinity is not something to worship from afar, but something to awaken within. He once wrote that the greatest discovery of all time will be when man realizes that thought itself is energy, capable of shaping reality. That realization would unite science, philosophy, and religion into one truth. He knew that if humanity embraced this, wars would cease. We would no longer seek power over others, because we would understand that power within. Competition would dissolve into cooperation, for creation itself is collective. But this vision was too radical for his time. To admit that the mind shapes matter was to overturn both religion and science. It threatened those who profited from ignorance and dependence. And so, his deeper message was dismissed as mysticism, buried beneath the fame of his technological work. Yet the truth remains, Tesla's real invention was consciousness itself. He was showing us that the human mind is a divine instrument, capable of tuning into the very frequency of God. He believed that when humanity collectively remembers this, we will enter a new age, one where technology is guided by wisdom, where science serves spirit, and where energy flows freely because we finally understand its source. In that future, humanity will not need to beg for light. We will become the light. And Tesla's vision, once thought impossible, will be recognized for what it truly was, not the dream of a scientist, but the prophecy of a soul who saw beyond time. The divine light. For Tesla, light was not merely illumination. It was revelation. Long before quantum physics spoke of photons as the building blocks of reality, he intuited that every beam of light carried intelligence. He believed light was the first language of creation, the visible signature of God's vibration made manifest. He once said that if we could understand the mysteries of light, we would understand everything. To him, light was the bridge between the seen and the unseen, the place where spirit becomes matter. He spent countless nights surrounded by electrical arcs, blue fire dancing through the air, whispering that he could feel the presence of something holy in that glow. When Tesla looked at lightning, he did not see violence. He saw communication, the planet speaking to the cosmos in luminous bursts. Each flash, he said, was a pulse of divine thought. The same current that moved through thunderclouds flowed through the human nervous system, connecting us directly to the creative mind of the universe. He believed that all light originates from consciousness. In his view, thought condenses into vibration, vibration into energy, and energy into visible radiance. Every spark of creation begins as awareness expressing itself through frequency. In that sense, he considered the human soul a fragment of pure light temporarily clothed in form. Tesla often described his moments of inspiration as flashes, literal bursts of light within his mind. He would see intricate machines, mathematical sequences, or entire systems appear in luminous clarity. To him, these were not hallucinations. They were transmissions. He said that knowledge arrived as light because light is the native language of the universe. He theorized that what religions call divine revelation is the same phenomenon, consciousness receiving information as patterns of light. Prophets, mystics, and inventors were all tuning into the same radiant field, interpreting it through their own awareness. In this sense, Tesla saw divinity not as a distant being, but as a living spectrum. God was light beyond light, the infinite vibration from which all other frequencies emerge. He often compared creation to a prism, the white light of divine consciousness refracted into the colors of existence. Each color, each frequency, each dimension was an aspect of that one pure source. He also recognized that human emotion and thought emit measurable light. Modern instruments can detect this biophotonic glow, but Tesla sensed it intuitively. He believed that the halo depicted around saints and enlightened beings was not symbolism. It was the actual radiation of a consciousness vibrating in harmony with divine frequency. He sought to replicate this radiance through technology, not to imitate God but to understand Him. His experiments with wireless energy were attempts to mimic how the universe transmits light and information without wires or boundaries. He envisioned a world where human-made light could mirror natural light, limitless, clean, and free, because he believed that was the divine design. But deeper still, Tesla saw light as memory. He proposed that every photon carries the history of creation, that nothing is ever lost. It only changes form. He imagined the universe as an ocean of eternal luminosity where every action, thought, and vibration leaves an imprint in the light field of existence. He said that when we die, we do not vanish, we dissolve back into that field of radiant awareness. The soul, he claimed, is an electromagnetic pattern too refined to decay. It simply changes wavelength, continuing to vibrate beyond the visible. Life and death were to him transitions of light. In private conversations, Tesla often spoke about the connection between light and love. He said love is the emotional experience of divine radiation passing through the heart. When we love deeply, we resonate with the same frequency that fuels the stars. Love, he said, is God's electricity moving through human consciousness. He believed that this radiant current could heal both body and mind. He experimented with ultraviolet and resonant frequencies to restore balance in living tissue. He imagined hospitals filled with harmonic light rather than chemicals, treatment through coherence rather than resistance. He called this radiant energy healing, an idea far ahead of its time. For Tesla, light was also truth. Darkness was not evil. It was ignorance, the absence of awareness. He said that every problem humanity faces comes from a lack of illumination, from forgetting that we are beings of light trying to see ourselves through shadows. Once you remember your luminous nature, fear dissolves like mist under sunrise. He once wrote, "The gift of mental power comes from God, divine being, and if we concentrate our minds on that truth, we become tuned to this great power." To concentrate, in his sense, was not to strain but to align, to focus awareness until the mind glows with the same purity as light itself. He believed meditation and prayer are forms of photonic tuning. When you quiet the mind and open the heart, your energy field begins to oscillate at higher frequencies, producing inner light visible to the soul if not to the eyes. This is why spiritual experiences often involve visions of brilliance or illumination, consciousness meeting itself as light. Tesla's fascination with luminosity shaped his understanding of destiny. He saw humanity as a species still learning to radiate. We build external sources of power because we have forgotten the internal source. He envisioned a time when people would no longer rely on burning matter for light, but would instead draw energy directly from the ether, the same infinite field that sustains the sun. That, he said, would mark the return of divine alignment, when humanity mirrors the harmony of creation. He was convinced that such an age would come, that one day technology and consciousness would unite, and the artificial lights of our cities would be indistinguishable from the light of our souls. In that future, the separation between the scientific and the sacred would vanish. Light would not just illuminate our rooms, but our understanding. We would finally realize that every atom glowing in the dark is a tiny prayer, the universe remembering itself. And when that recognition dawns fully, Tesla said, humanity will stop worshiping light as an external power and begin living as light the way we were meant to from the beginning. The continuum of creation to Tesla, energy was not a thing, it was everything. He saw the universe not as a collection of particles colliding in empty space, but as a living ocean of motion, an unbroken field of vibration where thought, matter, and spirit flow together as one. He believed that creation was not an act that happened long ago, but a process occurring every instant. The divine frequency never stops transmitting. The entire cosmos is the broadcast, galaxies, stars, minds, and atoms all flickering in perfect rhythm, waves inside waves, each harmonizing with the next. He wrote that matter is nothing more than energy slowed down to a perceptible vibration. And energy itself is consciousness made visible. This was the foundation of his vision, that the material world is simply the shadow of spirit vibrating at lower frequencies. In his notes, Tesla described energy as the universal substance of God. It was the clay from which all form is shaped and reshaped. But unlike clay, it cannot be destroyed. It only changes state, just as ice becomes water and water becomes vapor. Consciousness, too, changes form but never ends. He said the human body is a condensation of divine energy, shaped by the soul's vibration. The mind is not inside the brain. The brain is inside the mind. Awareness surrounds us, moves through us, and animates us. We do not live in the universe lives in us. Tesla began to understand that every invention, every natural law, and every spiritual teaching was pointing toward this single truth: that energy, matter, and consciousness are three aspects of one continuum, creation expressed in three languages. Science speaks of energy, religion speaks of spirit, and philosophy speaks of mind. But they all describe the same thing. He said the tragedy of humanity lies in dividing what was never separate. We study matter while ignoring consciousness, worship spirit while rejecting science, and live in conflict with ourselves because we have forgotten that all three are one. Tesla saw the divine pattern everywhere. In the spirals of galaxies, in the rhythm of a heartbeat, in the orbit of electrons, he recognized repetition, a geometry that revealed purpose. This was not chaos pretending to be order. It was intelligence expressing itself as beauty. He often spoke of the number 3 as the foundation of this unity. In his view, 3 represented balance, the trinity of creation. Energy, matter, and consciousness mirrored the divine triad known by many names: Father, Son, and Spirit. Creation, preservation, and transformation. Thought, emotion, and will. All were frequencies of the same truth vibrating through different traditions. He once remarked that everything in the universe operates according to this triadic principle. Nothing stands alone. Every force has its counterpart, and harmony exists in the third vibration that unites them: positive, negative, and neutral. Light, darkness, and the space between. The universe itself breathes in threes. Tesla was certain that once science embraced this unity, humanity would unlock unlimited potential. If we could learn to work with energy as consciousness instead of against it as matter, we could generate infinite power without extraction or destruction. He dreamed of technology that would mirror the benevolence of creation, clean, harmonic, regenerative. He said that the problem with humanity was not scarcity but ignorance. The energy was all around us, waiting to be tuned. He imagined devices that could tap into the surrounding ether, what we might now call the quantum field, and draw power directly from it. He said that in the space between atoms lies more energy than in the entire material of the atom itself. The key was frequency. Just as the human mind could access inspiration through alignment, machines could access energy through resonance. Both were instruments of the same field. He envisioned cities powered by invisible waves, airships gliding silently through the sky, and communities connected by a shared network of free energy. To him, this was not fantasy but inevitability. He saw a future where humanity would no longer burn or exploit, but tune and receive, where energy flowed freely as the divine intended, not as property, but as presence. He warned that if humanity continued to misuse energy, both physical and mental, the world would spiral into dissonance. He saw how greed and fear distorted vibration. Just as dissonant frequencies can shatter glass, collective dissonance can fracture societies. War, pollution, corruption to Tesla, these were symptoms of a civilization vibrating out of harmony with the divine continuum. He believed that coherence, both within the self and within humanity, was the solution. Coherence meant alignment, when thought, emotion, and action vibrate together. It was the human equivalent of resonance, allowing energy to flow without resistance. He taught that the heart was the true generator of coherence. Long before modern science measured its electromagnetic field, Tesla said the heart was the seat of divine intelligence, not a metaphorical heart, but the living pulse of creation within the body. When the heart and mind are aligned, he said, they form a bridge to the higher frequencies of existence. In those states, intuition becomes clear, creativity becomes effortless, and the soul remembers its connection to the whole. Tesla's own life demonstrated this alignment. He worked tirelessly, but his focus was effortless. He slept little, yet his mind remained luminous. He lived with almost no possessions, yet he radiated abundance. He understood that energy does not come from consumption, but from connection. He often spoke about the importance of purity, not moral purity, but energetic clarity. He avoided conflict, negativity, and distraction, saying they disrupted the inner current. He lived simply so that his frequency remained high enough to commune with the divine mind. He once said that if you wish to understand the universe, understand energy, frequency, and vibration. But he also implied something deeper, that you must become energy, embody frequency, live vibration. Knowledge was not enough. Only resonance could reveal truth. In his private notes, Tesla described the human being as a living coil of divine current, capable of receiving and transmitting cosmic energy. He believed that emotions like gratitude, joy, and compassion increased this conductivity, while fear and anger created resistance. He said love was the highest conductor, the frequency through which divine energy flows without distortion. When one lives in love, life itself becomes a circuit of light. Tesla often wondered whether humanity's evolution depended not on intelligence, but on vibration. He said that higher consciousness is not achieved through thought, but through frequency. When humanity collectively raises its vibration, we will not need revolutions. The systems built on lower frequencies will simply dissolve. He foresaw a time when this understanding would return, when science would rediscover what he glimpsed in his solitude, that energy is divine, that matter is sacred, and that consciousness is the bridge uniting them. That time, he believed, would mark humanity's true awakening, the moment when we stop seeking God in the heavens and begin recognizing God in the frequency flowing through all things. Tesla's legacy was not just technological. It was metaphysical. He left us not just blueprints for machines, but clues to our own divine architecture. He wanted humanity to realize that we too are generators of creation. Each of us is a conduit of the infinite field, a spark of the same energy that fuels stars. He said that the day we learn to live in harmony with that truth, we will no longer need to chase light, because we will have become luminous ourselves. And that, perhaps, was the forbidden secret he carried until the end, that the power we seek outside has always been the power within. The awakening of the human frequency in the final years of his life, when the world dismissed him as a forgotten dreamer. Nikola Tesla was still listening, not to applause, not to fame, but to the hum beneath existence. He said that silence was his last teacher. The world saw an old man wandering New York streets feeding pigeons, but in truth, Tesla had never stopped communing with the field that had guided him all along. He told the few friends who still visited that humanity was on the verge of something extraordinary. He said the world was about to enter what he called an age of light. He did not mean electric bulbs or power grids. He meant the illumination of consciousness. Tesla believed that the discoveries of energy and frequency were only the beginning. He foresaw that one day science would finally turn inward, studying consciousness as the true source of all phenomena. He said that when this happens, humanity will learn that every human being is a transmitter and receiver of divine energy. We will no longer see spirit as separate from science or the invisible as unreal. He envisioned an awakening in which technology would merge with wisdom, not to dominate nature, but to harmonize with it. Machines would mimic the benevolence of the cosmos. Energy would no longer be extracted through violence but received through resonance. He warned, however, that humanity had to choose. The same frequency that can heal can also destroy when misused. He said the coming age would depend on our vibration. If we live in fear, we will build machines that enslave. If we live in love, we will build tools that liberate. Tesla often spoke about this choice in metaphorical terms. He said that humanity is like a tuning fork, each person a small instrument vibrating within the grand symphony of existence. When we are in harmony, the song of life is beautiful. When we are out of tune, dissonance spreads as chaos, greed, and suffering. He believed that the shift of the planet itself, the changes in magnetic fields, in resonance, and emotion, would one day push humanity to recalibrate. He said the Earth would begin to vibrate at higher frequencies, forcing consciousness to evolve with it. Those who resisted would experience turmoil. Those who adapted would awaken. In this sense, Tesla was describing what many now call ascension, the elevation of human awareness to match the vibration of the divine field. He said the human brain is not just an organ of thought, it is a cosmic receiver. When our frequency rises, new bands of awareness open, just as higher frequencies reveal new stations on a radio. He believed that the next step in human evolution would not be physical but vibrational. We would not grow new limbs or organs, but new levels of perception. We would sense the interconnectedness of all things, not as belief but as experience. Telepathy, intuition, synchronicity, these would become normal, not mystical. Humanity would rediscover its place within the continuum of divine energy. Tesla called this the return to coherence. He said coherence is the natural state of creation, the alignment of frequency and consciousness. All dissonance, all suffering is temporary interference. The universe is always tuning itself back to harmony. He saw this tuning already happening in subtle ways. The rise of technology connecting people across the globe, he said, was the material shadow of a spiritual truth that humanity is one mind becoming aware of itself. The invisible signals of radio and electricity mirrored the invisible currents of consciousness linking every soul. Tesla predicted that as humanity's vibration rose, we would no longer rely solely on physical technology to connect. Communication would become instantaneous through consciousness itself. Thought would travel faster than light because it is made of light. Distance would dissolve and separation would end. He also foresaw that energy itself would one day be drawn directly from the atmosphere, what he called the cosmic storehouse. He said that when humanity attunes to the right frequency, power will be everywhere, free and limitless, just as spirit has always been. He dreamed that this would not just revolutionize industry, but consciousness. He said that when energy flows freely, so does compassion. When scarcity ends, competition dissolves. When fear of survival disappears, creativity awakens. Humanity, he said, is meant to be creative, not destructive. Our true nature is to build worlds, not burn them. Tesla's words were not prophecy in the mystical sense, but observation. He saw that evolution is inevitable because the universe itself is ascending. Energy always seeks higher order, higher harmony. The cosmos is climbing its own frequency ladder, and humanity is being carried with it. He believed that every individual who raises their vibration contributes to this planetary evolution. He said one coherent mind radiating love and clarity can influence thousands still lost in noise. Just as one tuning fork can bring others into resonance, one awakened consciousness can ripple across the field of humanity. This was why Tesla believed solitude and meditation were so powerful. In stillness, the mind aligns with the divine current, and that alignment radiates outward, silently shifting the collective field. He said that the most powerful force in the universe is not thunder or lightning, it is coherent consciousness. In his later years, Tesla wrote that the destiny of humanity is to realize itself as light, not metaphorically, but literally. He said every human being is a crystallized beam of divine energy, slowed into form for the sake of experience. When we awaken, we remember that our true nature is radiant, eternal, and creative. He said that one day, science will measure this truth, proving that the human energy field is not imagination but physics. That consciousness is not generated by the brain but transmitted through it from the cosmic field. That love is not emotion but frequency, the harmonizing tone of creation itself. Tesla's final notebooks, now lost or hidden, were said to contain sketches of devices that could amplify consciousness, machines that could enhance the frequency of thought, turning intention into direct influence on matter. Some believed these designs were metaphors. Others whispered that they were real and suppressed. But for Tesla, the greatest machine was always the human soul. He said the body is an instrument far beyond anything he could build, capable of perceiving, transmitting, and transforming infinite energy. He believed that once humanity learned to operate this instrument consciously, the world would enter a golden age. He called it the era of spiritual science, a time when discovery and divinity would merge, and knowledge would serve life rather than power. He said this age would not arrive through institutions or governments, but through individuals who awaken to their divine frequency. Tesla believed those individuals would become living transmitters of light, guiding others through resonance rather than preaching. They would heal through their presence, inspire through their vibration, and teach through their energy. He said that these people already exist, scattered across the world, quietly awakening, their frequencies rising in synchrony with the Earth's pulse. Each one, knowingly or not, contributes to the collective tuning of humanity. He called them carriers of the current. He believed that when enough of these carriers awaken, a tipping point will occur. Humanity will collectively shift into coherence, and the illusion of separation will dissolve. The borders between nations, races, and religions will lose their meaning, replaced by a shared awareness that we are all facets of one divine mind exploring itself through form. That, Tesla said, is the real second coming, not of a person, but of consciousness itself, the return of divine awareness to human life. He predicted that this awakening would not be loud or dramatic. It would begin quietly, in hearts and minds, spreading like resonance until the world begins to vibrate at a higher octave. He said that when this happens, light itself will change, becoming softer, brighter, and more alive. The air will hum differently. The earth will feel lighter. And humanity will look back and realize that heaven was never elsewhere. It was always here, waiting for us to tune into it. Tesla's vision was not fantasy. It was faith in frequency, faith that the same intelligence that creates worlds is guiding humanity toward harmony. He said that no darkness can stop this process because even darkness is part of the rhythm, the pause between notes in the eternal song. His final message to humanity was simple: raise your vibration, think clearly, feel deeply, love fiercely. Because every thought, every emotion, every heartbeat contributes to the frequency of the planet. He believed that when enough of us remember this, when enough of us live as conscious transmitters of divine energy, the earth itself will sing again, and that song will be the voice of God made audible once more.